book writing takes a certain level of skill, but sometimes you've gotta wonder why writers decided to pair up certain ships. A multiverse presents infinite possibilities, including the Marvel world where Wolverine and Hercules, yep, the Greek god, joined forces to become lovers and prove their commitment by fighting their way out of hell. Literally. So when 10 evil versions of Charles Xavier are born throughout the multiverse, the Extreme X-Men comic series is born, uniting a team of X-Men from a variety of realities on a mission to eliminate them, one by one. Among the team's ranks are Dazzler of Marvel's main 616 universe, a severed Professor X-Head, a black Cyclops from the era of his Earth's American Civil War, and Howlett, a version of Weapon X described as Wolverine meets Teddy Roosevelt, but still Canadian. Together they travel from one alternate reality to the next, evil Xaviers before the doppelgangers can pose a threat to all of existence. Now the team's journey reunites Howlett and an alternate version of Hercules, who have much more history than their Earth 616 counterparts. Now Wolverine, or Howlett, and Hercules stake their claim as one of comics' most interesting couples when they reveal their love story to the rest of the team. Partners in bed and on the battlefield, Hercules and Howlett finally revealed their love after slaying a dangerous beast. But Zeus was furious that another god besides himself was consorting with mortals and banished the two to Tartarus. In Olympus's dungeon and prison for the Titans, the lovers spent the next years fighting thousands of demons and damned souls. Okay, this next relationship isn't exactly heartwarming, it's definitely more on the icky side. To date, one of the most bizarre comic book romances happens to be Ms. Marvel, Carol Danvers, and her love affair with her son. So what happens? Okay, let's start. The Avengers team returns from a mission to find that Ms. Marvel has moved in, and suddenly she's 8 months pregnant, even though she's only been absent for a couple of weeks. Now, being the Avengers, they welcomed Carol back, prepared for the birth, even though she didn't seem entirely happy with the whole situation. But with their help, she soon gave birth to a healthy boy. Aww. And then things get weird. Not only does the baby mature incredibly quickly, learning to walk and talk in no time at all, but he quickly reveals to the team that his father was him. Turns out that Ms. Marvel had been abducted by Marcus, the son of longtime enemy Immortus. After spending weeks trying to seduce her, Marcus gave up on the flowers and chocolate and simply used his father's advanced machinery to subtly seduce and impregnate Carol so that she could give birth to his double when she returned to Earth. And to put the final nail on the coffin of all that is reasonable and sane, the Avengers happily wave Ms. Marvel off as she goes to join her son/husband in his own universe. Although Marcus's plan had worked, his presence on Earth was now damaging time and space. Finding herself strangely drawn to her son, Carol was like, yeah, I'll go to his home dimension with them. She would return a few issues later, resentful of her teammates who should have known better than to let her go with a man who already admitted to kidnapping and manipulating her, but yeah. Iron Man has a knack for creating incredibly advanced technology, only for it to later blow up in his face. We all saw what happened in Age of Ultron when Tony Stark's scientific ambitions overshadowed potential dangers from his creations, and in Invincible Iron Man number 30, Iron Man's suit became alive and fell in love with him. Now, when Tony tells his suit he's just not into him like that, the suit kidnaps him, ties him to a tree, and tortures him. Stark intended the suit of armor to be a safety net, but instead, via a series of unpredictable events, it developed sentience and feelings for his creator. Getting access to Stark's brain immediately made the suit take a turn for the worse. Fortunately, the armor's newfound humanity ultimately led it to sacrifice itself to save Stark. Tony was lucky he didn't have another Ultron MCU situation on his hands. Yes, over the years, comic book creators have never been afraid to throw odd stories at Iron Man. Like he's had his suit emerge from his skin, and in early iterations of the character, wore magic boot skates as part of his armor. But this is a whole other level of weird. At one point or another, you gotta wonder how many substances were involved in the making of certain comic book series. The relationship between Cyclops and Jean Grey is one of the most well-known among X-Men readers, but that doesn't mean it hasn't seen its fair share of drama. Case in point, the psychic affair Scott Summers and sometimes hero, sometimes villain Emma Frost shared, well, the former was still with Grey. The pair becomes a physical item after Jean's death, or one of them, and even co-run Xavier's school after the professor resigns. And that doesn't go well, ending up as disastrously messy as their initial hookup years before. And even when Jean Grey does come back, the two couldn't stay out of each other's minds. The entire time that Scott was with Emma, he became more and more militant. Finally, when Scott died, Emma went bad again and used visions of Scott to start a war with the Inhumans, their relationship turning both of them evil at different points. A romance that was doomed from the start included longtime X-Men member Storm and a mutant from an alternate timeline named Forge. The duo first got together in the Uncanny X-Men in the 1980s, and their relationship was built on a lie from the beginning, causing the building of toxic lies to ruin things for them. See, Forge created a weapon for the US government that neutralizes a superhuman's powers, and something that came out of that weapon struck Storm and stripped her of her powers. Forge took her in to help her, they fell in love, but it didn't take long for Storm to learn that Forge made the device, and it destroyed their relationship. Forge even proposed to her before taking it back, not realizing she was actually gonna say yes. Amazing Spider-Man issue 131 is an iconic, if somewhat infamous issue of the Web-Slingers comic book. The issue paid off a growing relationship between May Parker and Otto Octavius. Yeah, the latter of whom had come to know the widow after renting a room from her. And Doc Ock was dead set on walking May down the aisle, though his reasons for doing so had very little to do with matters of the heart. So beforehand, a distant relative of Aunt May's had passed away, leaving her to inherit a nuclear facility of all things. And Doc Ock was like, I'm gonna marry her to get my hands on this. Although his mission would become far more difficult than simply reading off his vows. Along with Spider-Man bursting onto the scene, the crime lord Hammerhead and his goons also interrupted the corrupted nuptials. This led to an action sequence set at the nuclear facility, with Hammerhead's aggression accidentally causing a massive explosion. Spider-Man gets away with Aunt May, who's now fainted, but when she awakens to see herself in a helicopter with the masked menace, she passes out again. Thankfully, this was the end of her star-crossed love with Doc Ock in the mainstream continuity, but the concept did reappear in other stories. One comic that also used the idea was Spider-Man Life Story, which took a look at Peter's life throughout various decades, and at one point, Doc Ock would give up villainy and marry Aunt May, working alongside his new nephew in a scientific capacity. Alright folks, we're talking about Wolverine again. The relationship between Wolverine and Squirrel Girl in the comics is strange, and even by Wolverine standards. It's first hinted at when Emma Frost finds a mental image of Squirrel Girl in Wolverine's mind behind a door marked fantasies. Yeah, that's creepy enough, but then years later the two encounter one another at Avengers Mansion and immediately start acting awkward and generally behave like they hooked up at one point. The worst part of all of this, if you do the math right, it comes out that the point where Wolverine and Squirrel Girl could have gotten together would have been when it might have been illegal to do so. Okay folks, welcome to Earth 807128. 50 years ago, all the villains teamed up against all the heroes and killed them all, minus Wolverine, Hawkeye, Hulk, She-Hulk, and a couple of others. And what did Bruce do? He had a lot of offspring with his cousin, Jen, because she was the only one worthy of bearing his spawn. Yeah, there's not a lot to say about this pairing, because it didn't last long, and I think everybody wants to forget about it. Now, this is only in the Old Man Logan continuity, where Hulk is literally insane. I don't know if it's explicitly said to be non-consensual, but it's also heavily implied to be, which is even more icky. Gwen Stacy was Peter Parker's girlfriend, and was actually seen as a very passionately loyal woman throughout most of the series. Like, they were a dream team, and like, who wouldn't want to date Spider-Man? Heck, the death of Gwen Stacy is one of the most talked about Spider-Man storylines of all time. Second perhaps only to like his origin story. So imagine how fans felt when the Since Past arc in 2004 changed all of that in favor of secret twins, fathered by the Green Goblin with Stacy prior to her death. And those twins then turned into mini assassins hell-bent on whacking Spidey. Adding more fuel to the fire was the revelation that Mary Jane Watson was actually aware of the whole thing and kept Stacy's secret for years after her death. It's just a whole lot of retconning which did need to happen, proving once again that some things are called classic for a reason. And finally for today, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are two of the most popular characters in the Marvel's comics universe. In the world of Ultimate Marvel, the two also dated each other at one point. Okay, sure, so the pair's difficult upbringing was blamed on this bizarre coupling. Having been rejected by his father, Quicksilver sought comfort in the arms of the woman who reminded him most of his dead mother. And hey, yeah, sure, it seems natural that Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch would date. They're good looking, they're really close. Oh right, they're close because they're siblings. And once again, everybody else seemed to be entirely unconcerned by this relationship. The only exception was Captain America, but that's just because his old-fashioned 1940s brain couldn't fathom such 21st century concepts. Fortunately, the Wasp was on hand to explain the whole thing to him, because apparently this was all totally acceptable. I really don't have to explain why they are one of the worst comic book couples ever, right? I think there were some creators that actually cited this as one of the reasons why the Ultimate Marvel universe had to be ditched. Oh, and in one of the most disturbing scenes, the couple consummate their love while Wolverine watches from the bushes. And the fact that Wolverine might have been the twins' father in this universe makes that even worse. Okie dokie everybody, that's it for me today. So what pairing surprised you the most? Or grossed you out the most? Let me know in the comments, and while you're down there, don't forget to give this video some love. I've been Alexa, resident emo girly. See y'all next time.